the true crime cold case that haunted Peking in 1937 in our Book of the Week at 9:45. That's after we joined Libby Purvis and guests for midweek.
Hello, today we have Jack Lowden, currently running high-speed round and round the Hampstead Theatre as Eric Liddell, the hero of Chariots of Fire. But we're going to start with Jack Lowden, who, as I said, is playing Eric Liddell, the Scottish missionary whose story is told in Chariots of Fire, the famous film of the 1924 Olympic duel with Abrahams and the rest. It's now being rather brilliantly staged at Hampstead Theatre. I have to say, it did raise nostalgic longings for those gentlemanly days when chaps wore proper shorts and there was no sponsorship. Did you feel sort of, oh gosh, these were the days when you were thinking about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're running around in flannel shorts, which, I mean, it's romantic, but not necessarily ideal to run around in.
Not that comfortable.
No, but it's a funny thing. In the story, we follow Eric Liddell and Harold Abrahams, but also we have a look at the two American athletes at the time, Charlie Paddock and Jackson Scholz. And at the time, Charlie Paddock was the fastest man in the world, and he used to wear silk shorts.
Ah, so the friction was less.
So that he would run, and because he used to run with his knees so high that sometimes he would hit himself in the head. Sometimes he would.
At the Highland Gathering scene, you actually have to run in more or less tweed trousers, don't you?
In a tweed suit, yeah, tweed suit and
well, you
brown
take your
brogues.
jacket off.
I take my jacket off, loosen my tie a touch, and that's all I'm allowed. It's very, very difficult to run around in a tweed suit. I wouldn't recommend it.
Had you known much about Eric Liddell before? Did you grow up with the film and the legend?
I didn't grow up with the film, but I did know who Eric Liddell was. I watched the film when I got the phone call from my agent about the audition. I ran across the road to the library and got the film and watched it quickly. But I knew who Eric Liddell was. I grew up knowing about him. I mean, he's a hero back in Scotland. And I was saying earlier, like, I used to go to dance classes in Edinburgh, and our yearly shows would be near a place in Edinburgh called Holy Corner, and there's an Eric Liddell Centre. So we used to drive past Eric Liddell, this huge big sign with his name on, and I never knew who he was. But then I found out, and just an extraordinary man. So to be playing him is a huge, huge honour.
His stand on principle seems a bit extraordinary now, in that he was probably the fastest man in the world, but he nearly gave up his whole Olympic dream and training by refusing to run a heat on the Sabbath.
Yeah,
Low Church Scot. I mean, is that something you can come to understand?
I can't. Well, I admire it. I admire the fact that anybody, religious or not, had a belief that strong to give up a chance to win an Olympic gold medal in a 100 metre, because, I mean, it's the pinnacle, really, of the Olympics, the 100 metre sprint. But just as well, he was a phenomenal 400 metre runner as well. And everybody forgets that he actually won a bronze medal in the 1924 Olympics, as well as his gold in the 200 metres. I mean, the guy could run anything. Yeah. But it's fascinating that he was able to stand up at the time to the might of the British Empire. And we have that scene in the play, the Inquisition.
Where the committee come down, the Simon Williams pompous committee, come down heavy on him, young man,
Oh, yeah, and it's all very, come on, fair play and for king and country. And the big thing about him was that he did nothing for king and country. He was actually famed to say that he disliked the fact that the Olympics was between countries. He would have loved if it was Bob and Steve and Dave who ran, because he wanted to prove that he was the fastest in the world.
The other difficult thing is it's never that easy for an actor to play a character who's just good. No, and he was just good.
He really was.
There's not much to get hold of. As an actors always love something complicated and conflicted and miserable, don't they?
True. You were always, I think, as an actor, you're always trying to look for the flaw, and it's very difficult to find a flaw. And on paper, you might want to hit this guy in the face because he's so good. You want him to run.
After the Olympics, he went off to a missionary in China. He was killed. He was a good man.
He was a phenomenal man, and you're right. Yeah, you do. You tend to look for flaws, and you love playing people with problems and who are against it. I mean, most leading men in Hollywood, their characters they've always got a flaw, or they're a corrupt cop, something like that. But this guy is too good. He's too good, and it is very difficult. And sometimes it's difficult that you feel like you're playing a legend rather than playing a man. But the writing, Mike Bartlett's writing, he's enabled it, because it's a play, he's enabled that Harold Abrahams and Eric Liddell meet. And
that's right, there's a sort of symbolical meeting between the two, and they do become
and
real.
this never really, it didn't really happen in real life as far as I'm aware, and they never really ran against each other. Harold Abrahams used to run away scared every time Eric Liddell was running against him.
We must talk about the technology of this particular play, because Ed Hall has rather amazingly staged it by turning the little Hampstead Theatre into a track. There's a double revolving stage in the middle with an outer band and an inner band, and then these sloping tracks up and round and above the audience, all surfaced with sort of rough running stuff. You have to look as if you're on a sprint or finally the 400 metres. But you're skidding round the bends. There are some very tight corners.
Yeah,
you're like a racing car.
Yeah, it's almost the last thing it is a racing track. It's more of an obstacle course.
And you're round behind the audience and in front of the audience and shooting past me at one stage. I felt the wind. Yeah,
and there's as you said, there's ramps, there's gradients to deal with, brogue shoes, and the double revolve in the middle. We've tried to work with the idea that we might change the direction each night to help our legs, because we're now running on one side of our body.
Oh, it's like circus horses. They get all developed on one side of their bodies, going around the ring the same way.
But it might get a little bit confusing.
Well, the choreography is very tight, because in order for you to win, you and Abrahams to win your various runs, it's actually got to be choreographed so people cross over, and for you to get back first. It's actually quite tricky.
Sometimes in races that Eric's supposed to win, in rehearsals, Harold won, which made it the subsequent scenes very difficult and the whole plot very difficult. We also had one night when they run on with the news that Harold and I have been picked. Our friends Sandy and Aubrey run on with newspapers with the title Abrahams and Liddell picked for the 100. But my friend Sandy ran on one night with the headline Abrahams wins the 100 metre gold. And this was halfway through the play. So I snatched it off as quick as I possibly could. There is a lot depends on timing.
Is it right that you all went through extreme running training with British military fitness trainers and so on?
Oh yeah, a guy turned up 2 or 3 times a week during our 5-week rehearsal period in a van with a bucket full of numbered bibs, threw you in a numbered bib, and he was from the military and took us out into this common in South London. Every time we did this, there was hailstones or rain.
It was terrible weather all through rehearsal.
It was really
period.
Bad weather, and so you were doing sit-ups with rain in your eye. I mean, he didn't appreciate that when somebody screamed, and he said, "What's wrong?" And somebody said, "I've got some rain in my eye." And if a guy standing in cargo pants, that didn't go down well with him. But it was intense.
And your director Ed Hall, I trust he ran with you.
Ed ran with us. I have to give him that. He was there every single time we did it. He was.
And were the mature figures like Simon Williams, Nicholas Grace? Were they excused games?
They weren't excused, and I would love to be able to say they were there. They would love if I did, but they weren't there. They weren't there. But it's funny, I share a dressing room. Me and James, who plays Harold, we share a dressing room with the 4 senior members of the cast, and it's absolutely fascinating, the chat that comes out of there. It's great.
Of course, Eric Liddell also was known for his extremely natural, uncoached style, head thrown back and so on, unlike Abrahams, who had a professional coach, Musabini, and that was part of the tension of the whole thing. Did you try and run in character, as it were? Did you try and run in a Liddell way rather than a sort of trained way?
Yeah, I mean, I tried it, because when I got the part, I was going out at night running as much as I could, and I thought one night I would try throwing my head back. I mean, he literally ran with his eyes to the sky.
To God.
Like, to God. Yeah, exactly. And I tried it one night, and it's strangely liberating to run like that, to essentially run like a big Egypt, as he would say, as Eric would have said. But the guy, the two of them, Abrahams and Liddell, they actually both didn't like each other's style of running. Eric thought that Abraham's style of running was too strict and too tight, and vice versa. It's very difficult to see where you're going, especially when you're running around a circle that's moving against you, when your head is back. That took some doing, and I have skint knees. If anybody comes to see the play, I look like sometimes I look like an 8-year-old boy who's fallen over, ran into his mum.
Well,
I have skint knees from falling over plenty of times.
Story is, the true confirmed story now is you're going into the Gielgud Theatre in the West End afterwards. They're not going to have a running track up and down the aisles, are they?
Not down the aisles, just through the audience.
Through the audience.
Through the audience, yeah.
And at what level, sort of, in the Hampstead you were running past us at kind of head level?
Yes, they will. Our feet essentially will be at your head, because they've had to build it down through the stalls, and the first 6 or 7 rows of the stalls will be inside the track. It will be an amazing experience, but there's no barriers or walls as there are in the Hampstead, so hopefully we don't fall off and really ruin someone's night.
Oh, I don't know, they might quite like it. Land in their lap.
Pussy. Yeah.
Beautiful young men shooting past. I'm not saying I'm hoping or anything.